Well, good evening. I want to welcome you to our live streaming broadcast. And tonight we're going to cover Module 7 or Chapter 7, Real Estate Taxes. And this is a very good chapter. Again, you will probably see several questions from this chapter. And you may have to calculate, prorate a tax problem. We'll do that in tonight's live streaming. And we'll go through some of the things you need to understand about taxes. Now, remember that we've studied in the course that when you purchase a parcel of real estate, you actually own all of the rights to that real estate. Remember, it's a freehold estate. Freehold estate means it's ownership interest. It could go on for eternity, right? Non-freehold estate has to do with leases, as we will discuss in Chapter 17. But when we're talking about purchasing real estate, you own all of the rights to that real estate. It's yours. You can do with it whatever you want to, unless there's a legal life estate or some other type of situation. But we have this thing we will talk about as we move through the course, and I've introduced it a few times already, called Uncle Pete. P-E-T-E. It's an acronym, and it just stands for the fact that when you purchase real estate, you do have some, what's the word I'm looking for? You can do anything you want to with your real estate with the exception of a few items such as Uncle Pete. Police power. Police power means the local government has the right to put zoning laws in place to say you couldn't have a liquor store in a residential neighborhood. You couldn't put a restaurant in a specific neighborhood because it's zoned residential. Right here in Farmington, the last few months, there's been a big controversy because we have a street that is very close to, on one side of the street's commercial and on the other side of the street is residential. And a gentleman actually purchased a house and that is, the backside faces commercial, and he was told that he could put a lawnmower business in there and really has fixed it up nice. He's put a nice parking lot in, graveled it to park his equipment there. But the neighbors complained and said, wait a minute, that's zoned residential. We don't want commercial there. And so because of all of the comments and everything that was set forth in the town meetings, the local government, the city council, denied him the right to put his business on that property. That's part of police power. That's part of zoning and regulation. Then we have what is called eminent domain, and I'm going to just abbreviate that. I think it's E-M-I-N-E-T, domain. Eminent domain is when the government takes your property for the good of the government or for the good of the people. In other words, let's say that there's a highway that ends right here. And so you have to take this 2-lane road and goes all the way around for 50 miles to get back over here to the highway. True story here on Highway 67, just south of Farmington. Giving you another example. Well, the government came in and took this property, this farmland, through eminent domain. And they actually completed that highway. And now when I go to Little Rock, Arkansas to teach, it actually saves me probably 1 full hour, because before I had to go all the way around to catch back up to the part of Highway 67 that was finished in Arkansas. Now, since they've opened up this stretch, I can take that new route. It saves me approximately 1 hour. Now, when they took the farmland through eminent domain, there were 3 things that have to be met. And we're going to talk about these as we move forward, but I think it's good for me to talk about this here. It has to be just compensation. They've got to pay the farmers what the land's worth. They need due process of law. In other words, they just couldn't come in and say, hey, we're taking your farm, and next month take it. No, it has to go through the court procedures. You have a right to appeal. You have a right to have an attorney, to go before a judge. All of that takes due process. And the third thing is, it has to be for the good of the public. Well, in this example, they were able to say, look, this is going to save a lot of time for people. It will open up new routes of business from Dallas to Chicago with the interstate. I mean, it's definitely beneficial for the people. So they had this property appraised, went through due process. They gave them just compensation. The highway opened. That's the second part of eminent domain. Of Uncle Pete, pardon me. That's the second part of the acronym of Uncle Pete. The third part, what we're going to talk about in this chapter, is taxation. Now, this is the government's right to tax your property, to raise funds for the local government. So this is a module we're on here in Chapter 7. We're going to talk about taxation, and it's part of Uncle Pete. And then the last one is a sheet, which I think we've already been introduced to in one of the previous chapters. And a sheet is when you die without heirs and without a will, your property will escheat to the state. So if you have no heirs and you have no will, you're not leaving it to your church or to a local club or organization, and you have no heirs and you die, the government will get your property. That's the fourth leg of Uncle Pete. So let's talk about taxation. And just wanted to bring that into light so you understand that the government has the right to tax our properties. Now, I'm using the printout from the book that's in your course reference material. You don't really have to print the material out if you don't want to, but if you'd like to print out Chapter 7, you're welcome to do that. You could follow along with your computer or iPad, or you could simply just take some notes, one or the other. Again, all of the information that's in the book is the same information that's in your slides, so don't feel like you're not. Don't think there's something in the book that's not in your on-course material, because it's all right there. Some people would prefer to have a book printed out and highlight and make notes, and that's good. Okay, so taxation. We have this word, and you need to understand this word. It will probably be on the test, and it's called ad valorem. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I always jokingly say, but it's true, they took phonics out of school when I was a kid, and I have been forever humiliated because of that. I wanted to be a disc jockey for years and years, and I remember saying, and that's James Taylor up on a rough. And the program director said, did you just say rough? And I said, no, I meant roof. So anyway, ad valorem, I hope that's pronounced correctly. If I didn't, you can figure that out. But you need to know this term right here. You'll probably see it on the test. And it means according to value. So this means according to value. And basically, this just means simply, if you purchase a home that's $1 million, your tax will be more than someone who owns a home valued at $100,000. Their tax will be less because you're paying tax according to value. So the higher the priced property that you invest or purchase in, your real estate taxes will be higher, okay? You're paying according to whatever the value of the property you have, so you need to know that. Now, real property taxes, and this is in your notes, and you really need to write this down, highlight it, make sure you understand it, because you will see this on the test. Real property tax liens take priority over all other liens, okay? So let's talk about this. Let's just say let's just say that there's a foreclosure sale. And we're going to talk about this in chapter 15. So at the foreclosure sale, you're going to have a loan for, let's say, $50,000. That's your first lien. We'll talk about this more in chapter 15 as well. And let's say you have a second lien or deed of trust or mortgage, G-A-G-E, of $3,000. You put new windows in your house. So you owe $53,000 on your property. And you've not been making your payments, so the bank is going to foreclose on your property at the courthouse. Well, normally, if you have a real estate tax lien or back taxes, they will jump up here into the top priority, top spot. So if you owe taxes of $3,000, that means we now have a total of $56,000 that's owed. And at the tax sale, let's just say that someone just bids $53,000 and the judge or the sheriff says sold for $53,000. Who gets paid? Well, the real estate taxes get paid first, and the first loan will get paid second. And these poor people, whoever this is that had the second mortgage, they just lost their $3,000. So they would have to be there to bid up to figure out if they think they can resell the house for more than $53,000. But I want you to understand, at that tax sale, these tax liens will jump in front of everybody and take top priority. Okay, very important for you to know that. Now, to determine, how do we determine what the tax will be on the property? And you won't need to know this for the test. I've never seen this on the exam, but I'm just going to briefly tell you in a nutshell. The local county government, the government's going to figure up how much money, how much money do we need, is needed to operate the local government. In other words, how much do we need to pay for the sheriff, the jail? They figure out all the money that's going to be needed to run the government, plowing the roads, road work, bridge work, all of the secretaries at the courthouse, the judges. So they come up with this dollar and they say, this is how much we need to pay for all of our expenses. Then they figure out what the income will be. So they have to figure out what the income is. And the difference between those two is the money that's actually needed to run the government, okay? So then what they're going to do is, and we have this on the online course and in your notes, the local authorities perform assessments on all the properties available for taxing the district, and these assessments will be done every few years. And through all of that, a tax rate is established. So basically, they figure out how much money do we need, what's the value of all the real estate, so the assessments. So they're looking at that. And through all of that, through some adding and subtracting and multiplying, they come up with a tax rate. Now again, you're not going to have to know all of, you just need to know the basic principle. We got to figure out how much the government needs to operate. We need to figure out what our income is, get the difference, find out what the values of all the properties are. So they do that every couple of years. And through some mathematical formulas, they come up with a tax rate. Now, I have you an example here in your notes. So let's just say that the government needs $400,000 to operate, okay? So in this example, the government needs $400,000. So we had income that's going to come in minus expenses. This is income that may come in from business license and so forth. And so the difference is this: we need $400,000 to run the government. And in our example here, we figure out that there are $10 million worth of real estate valuation after they've done the assessments on all the property. So when we take 400,000 and we divide it by 10 million, we get a tax rate that's needed to be 0.04. Now again, you shouldn't have to I've not seen any math problems where they make you figure this out. But if you do, you just take the money needed divided by the real estate that is out there, and it'll give you your rate. Now, if you watch the Real Estate Math Made Easy lesson, I'm going to show you this again up here. Remember, I have a T problem, and so the 400,000 goes on top. We're solving for the rate. This is part, and this is total. And remember, I said in the math problems, you always put the largest number on the bottom. And so you just divide, because we're trying to find out what's the tax rate, right? In this case, we're looking for the tax rate. So we just take 400,000 because it's a smaller number. Remember that. That's the easiest way to do it. Put that in your calculator first, hit the divide button, put the 10 million in, and you will get 0.04. So that's the tax rate. That's how they compute the tax rate. Now, it gets a little more complicated, and I guarantee you, almost guarantee, I can't guarantee, but I feel pretty confident, you'll see this next question. A mil is 1/1000 of a dollar, okay? You're going to see that on the test, so just memorize it. 1/1000 of a dollar. I think that's right. Let me make sure. Yes. Or 1/10 of a penny. Now, here's what you need to just put in your memory bank for the test. 1 mil equals 0.001, okay? Just remember this right here. And you know, if it's 1/10 of a penny, remember 1% is equal to 0.01. So if we're making that a tenth, we just add an extra zero there. This is probably a test question. Now I've given you several of those. You should be down to about 90. But that's probably a test question. And I just, encourage you to know what a mil is. Make that one of your top flashcards. So this is a possible test question. They love these tax questions. They may want you to say, well, then how is 60 mils, how does that look in decimal form? Well, and here's how remember a mil, 1 mil equals 1/10 of a penny, of one penny. So how would you express 60%? 0.60, right? So how would you express, so you just need to add a zero in front of it. 60 mils would be 0.060. In the course, I have how do you do 40 mils? 40 mils is equal to 0.040. How about 7 mils would be equal to 0.007? 9 mils 0.009. How about 23 mils? 0.023. Just put that 0 out there. So just remember, you know, just like our percentages for 60%, 0.60, if we want to convert that to mils, you just got to put that 0 out in front. They may ask you a question on that, okay? So I just want you to make sure you understand how to calculate and how to that's just, I can almost guarantee you'll see that, a question about mils. So the tax rate could be expressed as mounts per 100 or per 1,000. 50 mils equals $5 per $100 of assessed valuation, or $50 per 1,000 of assessed valuation. And they'll give you that information in the problem, and we'll work a couple of these. So here's a typical tax problem. The tax assessment ratio for a house is valued at $90,000, okay, is 40%. So the house, it says the house is valued $90,000 is 40%. If the tax rate is $3.50 per $1,000 of assessed valuation, what is the quarterly tax bill? Now, when you see a problem like this, and the test writers love these kind of questions, because what they're really trying to get you to do is, get this back, they want to throw these kinds of things in the question. And guess what answer A will be? The annual. And a lot of test students will figure this out, get the annual tax, they'll see the first answer being the annual tax, and they'll mark that in the computer, and they're going to go, yes, I got one right, that was easy. And they didn't read the question 2 or 3 times, and the answer says, no, what's the quarterly tax bill? And they've snuck it down here on C or D. So you really have to read these questions carefully. So let's do this. Let's solve the problem. So if the house is valued at $90,000, is the assessed valuations, what they're really saying here, and these will be worded very good for you, is the assessed valuation's 40% of $90,000. So step number 1 is to find out what's the assessed valuation. And remember, we can use our T problem. So we're trying to find out, in this example, what's the assessed valuation? We know 40% we have, so we know our rates down here. Remember, rate, total, and part. Now, I don't know about you, but I always get a little confused with what goes on top and what goes on bottom. And remember, the smaller number always goes on top. Well, if the house is valued at $90,000 and we're trying to find out the assessed valuation, which is 40% of $90,000, we know we're solving for the top number, right? The smaller number. So the total is equal to $90,000. And what does the T problem tell you to do in this example? It says multiply. So all we do is take 90,000 times 0.40, and I think we should get, I should have brought my calculator down, but I did not. So let me see this here. So we will bring up my calculator. 90,000 times 0.40 is 36,000. Now, I do want to take a moment and stop here and say, get a good calculator. Get a basic calculator you can take with you with not all the bells and whistles. That has big numbers and, is just a nice, good calculator. Don't use your phone. The phone calculator is horrible because I try to use it and it does weird things. So get just a $7 calculator that's a basic add, subtract, divide calculator. And I'm almost certain they'll allow you to take that in there for the test. So, but you don't want anything fancy or programmable. They won't let you take that in. So this gives us $36,000. All right, now we've solved this part, haven't we? It says the second part that we need to solve is it's $3.50 per 1,000 of assessed valuation. Well, $36,000 is the assessed valuation, and if it's per 1,000, we just divide that by 1,000, right? And that gives us 36. There are 36 1,000s in the assessed valuation. So now it's $3.50 per 1,000. We just take 36 times $3.50. And when we do that, 36 times $3.50, we get $126. It's not a big tax bill, I know. And what did I say was going to be answer A? 126. They're trying to suck you in to go for that answer. And that is incorrect. Because when you read the rest of the problem, we've got to know what the quarterly is. So we divide 126 by 4, and the answer I think is $36.50, or 126 divided by 30. Oh, 126 divided by 4, $31.50. And that's going to probably be answer C or D. Now, these are just quick numbers. I mean, taxes are going to be higher than that, and you're going to see numbers that are probably higher than that for the exam that are going to be true. I just want to point out a couple of things here. Find out, are they wanting the annual tax rate? Do they want the quarterly? Are they asking for semi-annual? They won't ever ask for like what's every 2 months. I mean, they're either going to say what's the annual tax bill, what's the semi-annual tax bill, what's the quarterly taxes. I've seen them say the quarterly taxes are X number of dollars, what's the annual tax bill? And they give you the answer, and all you have to do is take the information in the problem times 4 to get the annual taxes. So just read the problem very carefully. And you know what, again, sometimes people can say, let me take 3150 times 4, and they're just able to work it backwards, and they plug each answer until one works. You can do that as well. You'll probably see that on the test right there. That's one of your math problems, and really, they're not too difficult. You should be able to knock those out of the park and do just fine with going through that. Okay. We talk about equalization factor to make up inequalities. I give you an example there. I do not think you will see that on the test. I have not seen that on the test. I just go past, don't even worry about confusing your mind on that. However, I give you an example on how to do that. And usually, when they talk about an equalization factor, if property values are down, sometimes the assessor might use an equalization factor. And if they do have this on the test, it would be something like 10%. All you're really going to do is take the assessed valuation of the property and multiply it times 10%. And that's going to, in other words, what they're trying to do, because property values are down, they're adding a 10% equalization factor, and they're trying to raise the prices, what? Up to equal everything out. So I don't think you'll see it on the test, but if you do, all you have to do is take the equalization factor they're giving you and just multiply it times the assessed valuation and add it on top of that. Okay? I don't think you'll see that, but if you do, you're just trying to equalize everything out. So just think in terms, they're adding an equalization factor of 10%. Do I need to raise property values 10% or lower them? And you'll be able to read, and you either add or deduct 10% or 15%. So I don't think you'll see that, but it's not going to be too difficult to figure out. Okay, and then we talk about special assessments. A special assessment is when people want to, you do a special assessment to help improve an area. I was on city council years ago in Deloge, Missouri, and I remember we had some people from a subdivision who came to the city council meeting. And of course, I've been teaching real estate for years, even back then, and they were wanting to have new sidewalks and curbs and guttering, and they wanted the city to pay for it. And I asked the question, well, I think we should do a special assessment. If the neighborhood wants that and everybody agrees to it, we should pay a special assessment. And so, that's when you might want sidewalks, curbs, and gutterings. And so the government taxes your property with a special assessment, and that income that you will pay for those improvements will help pay for those improvements over time. Now, the benefit is you might get sidewalks in your neighborhood, new curbs and gutterings, whatever. So it helps really raise your property values up, and you're just paying for it over a longer period of time. Here's what you're going to see on the exam regarding a special assessment. And yes, you'll probably see this. They're going to give you a problem about all these people who had a special assessment for some sidewalks and curbs and guttering. Then they're going to give you A, B, C, and D, and one of these answers is going to be an owner who owned a corner lot. And they're just going to ask you who pays the most special assessment of these four people. And it would be the person with the corner lot. Why? Because, let me draw this out, they're going to benefit the most, okay? So if you had, this is a street, and we're putting new sidewalks down this here, and then the street goes back and the sidewalk goes back, right? So here are the property owners, property owner A, property owner B, and property owner C, same way here. So here's C, B, and A. And in legal descriptions, remember this is lot 1. Lot 1, this would be block A, and this might be block B. Remember that? So we could put lot 1, 2, 3. Those would all be in lot 1, block A, town of Crawley. Remember that? So we're covering legal descriptions there. Now, why does the person on the corner pay more special assessment? You only pay for what you're using. These people just have that much sidewalk. They're paying their fair share. Remember, it's kind of like ad valorem, according to value. But these people have a sidewalk that benefits the whole corner lot. So you're going to see a test question. I've seen that on special assessments. And just look for the person who has the corner lot. They may give you front footage, and so who's going to pay more special assessment? The person who owns the most front footage, okay? Because they have more benefits, so they're going to have to pay for more. That's a test question that I've seen from this chapter. Seen it a lot. The mill's a test question you're going to see from this chapter. Tax liens taking priority, test question you're going to see from this chapter. How to do a tax problem. Those are all questions that I've seen from this chapter. And then remember that certain properties are exempt from taxes, like public schools, governments. religious-owned properties, hospitals. And by the way, in your notes, we tell you that special assessment properties need a vote from the public who will benefit from the improvement. They have to, the government just can't come in and say, we're going to do it and tax you whether you like it or not. In any type of special assessment, they would have to allow you to vote to either say, yeah, we want this, or no, we don't want that. Okay, then I have a couple of other tax problems. Let's do a couple more of these just to make sure that everybody's good to go on these. So the current market value of a property is $35,000. Purple's almost gone there. So this is the current market value. I'm going to put MV for market values, $35,000. For tax purposes, it is assessed at 40% of market value. So it's 40% of market value. Remember our T problem? We're solving for the assessed valuation, right? Which is a smaller number. That's part on top. This is total, and that's a rate. So we know the rate's 40%. Remember, we move our decimal over 2 places. And do we know the total? Sure, it's 35,000. So 35,000 times, we just had a brand new student sign up for the real estate school. That's cool, so I'm happy about that. And hopefully you'll be watching this session here. 35,000 times 0.40 is equal to 14,000. So the part is 14,000 right up here. See that? Now, so that's our assessed valuation. 14,000 equals the assessed valuation. The problem then says for tax purposes, it's appraised at 40% of market value. The tax rate is $4 per $100 of assessed valuation. So now we divide this by 100. See, in the last problem, we divided by 1,000. So take 14,000, divide it by 100, equals 140, right there. Now, the rest of the problem says the tax rate's $4 per $100 of assessed valuation. So we now we know how many of these 100s we have. We take it times $4, and the answer is $560. Now remember, make sure that you read the problem, find out if they're asking you for annual, semi-annual, or quarterly. Annual, we got the answer. Semi-annual, divide by 2. Quarterly, divide by 4. Okay? So this is the answer we were looking for right here. We got one more, and that's all for Chapter 7. This is really cool because I used to have to drive over to the junior college and up to my office where I had a training room, and I would spend hours there every night in a live classroom, and it was great because you had all the people in the classroom, but it's really cool when I can do this online, and some of you can watch from home through live streaming, or you can just watch the recorded version right from the session. So I hope this is helpful for you, and I hope you're enjoying it. So the last problem here, if the tax rate on a home was 64.5 mils, uh-oh, they're throwing a curveball at us, and the home was assessed at 25% of its fair market value of $175,000, how much was their quarterly tax? Remember that song, Freak Out? Freak out. That's what you might think when you read this, but don't. It's not that difficult. You take $175,000 because they're telling you the house is valued at $175,000, but the assessed valuation is 25% of that. So we're just going to multiply that times 0.25. It's really our T problem. And when we do that, we come up with $43,750. $50. That's our part, which is really the assessed valuation. Now the problem said if the tax rate on a home is 64.5 mils, what's the quarterly tax rate? Well, remember on the other problems when we were having to divide this number by 1,000 to get the how many $4 per 1,000 or $3.50 per 100 or whatever? We don't have to do that because they're telling us the tax rate is 64.5 mils. So we just take $43,750 and we multiply it times 0.0645 because it's 64.5 mils, remember? And I said all we have to do is put the 0 out there. We just move that over. That's how we do that. I mean, let's think about it. How about 33.5 mils? What would that be? 0.0335. Just throw that 0 out there. Okay, how about 3.5 mils? That would be 0.0035, right? So just throw that either 1 mil out or 2 mils out. Okay, so when we multiply this, and again, this is just a T problem, same thing we're doing. Now we're solving for the total tax, or the tax, which is still going to be the smaller number on top. That's what we're solving for. When we multiply those by each other, we get $2,821 and 87 cents, 87.5, or so you'd round it up to 88 cents. That's going to be answer A. Some of you will take that answer and you will get it wrong because the question said, what's the quarterly tax? So you have to divide by 4 because John said I should always read the question 3 times. And when we divide by 4, we get $705 and I think 47 cents. And that's going to be your answer. And that will probably be down here on B, C, or D. Because they're really trying to suck you in on that. They're trying to say, what's the quarterly? And they know that a lot of people will work this, get the answer, the annual taxes, and they'll glance down at all the choices and say, well, I must have got it right because there's the answer. But then they failed to read that little word quarterly in there. So you've got to read the questions a couple of times. This is a good chapter. I was talking to a new student today and I was telling him, I said, I want you to go through the modules. When you get to module 6 or 7, you've got to come right back and you've got to review those chapters again. Chapter 7 is a chapter you want to review and go over a couple of times. So, hey, keep up the good work. Always feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions whatsoever. I'm here to help you pass the test. Thank you for your business and keep studying hard.